Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me for another video. As you can see, a little bit of a different setup, and that's simply because I have turned us around. I mean, I thought, do you want to be looking at a blank wall, or shall I mix it up, you know? So here we are. Anyway, let's just get straight into this video, shall we? So grab a cup of tea and let's get into it. Cold tea, because I left it too long. So I've talked a lot about habits and goals for 2019 and trying to incorporate new things into our lives. However, I have not really talked that much about how I'm going about doing that, or any advice for you if you are trying to implement new habits into your life. Especially now that it's February, some of us are like, I don't care anymore, or you've fallen off it a few weeks ago and you kind of like shuffle that back under the rug. But today I wanted to talk about how we can actually achieve our goals, if it's to do with fitness, if it's to do with health, if it's to do with waste, if it's to do with moving towards a more plant-based diet. Whatever it is, I would love to try and help you today by sharing with you 3 of the things that I have been really trying hard to use and incorporate. And also this comes down to my reading challenge as well, because I have been learning so much. I've read 2 psychology books among many others, and they have really helped me to understand human behavior, my behavior, and how to move forward in a really positive way. So let's start with number 1. Okay, so number 1 is to write yourself a game plan. And by this is exactly what I mean. Say your goal for 2019 was to reduce your waste by 25%, which is a wonderful goal. I mean, very bold, but wonderful. But that is not specific enough. It's a little too vague, and it's very hard to tangibly it's very hard to tangibly see if you are being successful or actually if you're falling a little short. So here is my tip. Get specific and then break it down. So first, maybe you want to identify the areas in which you can actually reduce your waste. Obviously, we all know it, and if you don't, you should. We don't all have the same access to things. Not all of us have wonderful zero waste shops. Some of us live in food deserts. Some of us don't have access to anything that we can't buy offline, so in person. So it's very important that you choose a very specific and personal thing to your journey, your access, and your lifestyle. So what can you specifically actually change in your life? So what do you have access to that will enable you to reduce your waste by 25%, if that is your goal, of course. So you need to pick that one thing and you need to write it down. The more specific you get, then the more chance you have of tangibly being able to actually track that waste and being able to, you know, make a real difference. If for example, it was not say 25% waste, say it's you want to just stop coffee cups, for example, then you know what you could do is keep a tally chart of all the coffee cups that you actually do waste, and in that way it's a very visual way of showing you whether you are still wasting, what you're not wasting, or you could just give yourself a gold star or tick off on something or on your phone or whatever, or saving that money for something else, for example. That way you are positively reinforcing that change that you're making, but also you're able to actually track and see that you are making a massive change. It's super hard if we are very vague with our kind of habits that we're trying to change, and it's also super hard if we are not actively trying to make sure that those habits are specific. Anyway, let's move on to number 2. Don't forget about your tea. I always forget about mine. And now it's cold. Okay, number 2, and this is something I have learned. Try and reduce the amount of friction or hassle that is actually preventing you from creating those new, good habits, or creating or putting those things in place to enable you to achieve your goals. So if there are even a couple of extra steps for you to have to do before you're able to, say it's to go to the gym, and your gym is like a bus and a train and another bus away. That's like 3 extra steps and 3 extra kind of hassles that are in place, which mean that you're far less likely, unless you're super committed, to actually go. So it's really important that we try and reduce these, especially in the early stages of implementing and creating these new habits. So for example, I'm doing a 30-day yoga challenge, and as much as I like yoga, I don't love it enough to go to a yoga studio every single day and practice and do an hour-long class or however long it is, even though I am doing a challenge. For me, that has caused so many additional frictions and hassles that will have enabled me to actually fail at this challenge. So what I decided to do, I decided to take away as many of those frictions and hassles as possible before I even started that challenge, so that I was trying to set myself up for success. So for example, I didn't want to have to pay for a class or a membership just in case I really hated it. I didn't actually want to leave my house, because who wants to do that? I also didn't want, therefore, to have to put on loads of clothes appropriate, for leaving the house. Whereas if you're doing it here, you can literally wear whatever you want. You don't have to put your shoes and socks on, you have to put on your jacket, get everything ready. It makes your life so much simpler. And also lastly, I didn't want to have the guilt of not finishing a class or not enjoying the class either, because to me that was a hassle and a friction that would have prevented me from coming back to the mat the next day. So to combat these frictions, instead, so I didn't have to leave my house or pay for a class that I wasn't sure I was actually going to enjoy, I decided to use YouTube. And Yoga with Adriene is wonderful, and you're still supporting her by going and watching and liking and commenting on her videos to thank her for the content that she has given you. This way I was able to stay at home. I didn't have to wear outdoor appropriate clothing, and then it also meant that I could do at any time of day that I wanted. I didn't have to adhere to very specific classes times. This also meant that I could practice until I was bored, or I could come to the mat and do 5-minute classes, because she has really short classes as well. Or it meant that I would actually one day eventually get to the end of that class. I hate the idea of feeling guilty because I was only able to do 10 minutes of yoga, or it got too hard so I wasn't able to complete the class. By taking away that friction and that hassle, I actually came to the mat so many more times, and I was much more willing and happy to do so, because I was going to do as much as I wanted, and I didn't have to do a full class to get the proper benefits of yoga. So those were definitely the things that I was able to take away, and probably, or hopefully, a good example to you in case you are looking for different ways to reduce the things that are preventing you from achieving your goals. So the third thing is, if you are trying to break a bad habit, don't try and simply break that bad habit, because it's incredibly hard to simply erase something that we are doing, especially if you have spent decades actually honing in on that terrible habit. It's so much better, especially psychologically, if you replace that bad habit with something good or better. So for example, I had a bad habit of just mindlessly scrolling through Instagram, just looking at other people, seeing what they were doing, and wasting my time. So instead, I decided I'm going to read 10 pages of my book. Every time I reach for my phone, I'm just going to pick up my book instead, and I'm going to read instead. So that actually coincided with my reading challenge, and because I'm reading a book a week, I have to spend all my free time essentially picking up a book and reading it. So any kind of 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, an hour in the morning, maybe an hour in the evening, maybe 2 hours on a Sunday morning, whenever I can find the time, I have to be reading. So that's actually helped me enormously to stop scrolling through Instagrams, through YouTube, etc. So when I do go onto those platforms, I'm doing it far more intentionally and mindfully, and I am looking for my friends that I follow or managing my social media accounts, etc. And I do it in a much more productive way, which means I spend far less time on social media when I could be reading instead. Obviously, that doesn't have to be something that you do if you would much prefer to spend time journaling, for example, instead of scrolling through YouTube or Instagram, or if you want to spend time replying to work emails, because that's a good habit that you need to get into, then do that instead. It's whatever works for you. So that's it. Those are my 3 tips, I guess. I didn't want to give any more because I would have felt like they were a bit forced. These are the things that I genuinely do and have found incredibly helpful. So I hope that you find them helpful as well. Of course, if you have any other tips for everyone, please leave them in the comment section down below, and I highly suggest reading the nudge unit. I will put that in the link because I always forget to link things that I mention, but I will this time, I promise. And I just want to say a massive thank you to my patrons. Over on Patreon, I have shifted the tiers a little bit. So from the smallest tier, you can get like your own personalized Instagram stories, I guess, on the Patreon app. And then moving up, you can vote on my content and see what kind of stuff that I'm going to be producing on YouTube and on the website and stuff like that. And then higher up, you have also the vlogs that I'm creating. So all the vlogs that I create are now live on Patreon, and there are new ones every other week or every week sometimes. And then the highest one, I am now starting to introduce kind of audio roundups of the books that I'm reading and things like that. So there's lots of additional content if you are able to. Of course, if you're not able to support me, please continue enjoying the content on here. And I look very much to seeing you on Sunday. There will be a video on Sunday. So thanks for being patient, and I will see you then. Again, thank you very much for watching. I will see you very, very soon. Bye.